Welcome to our breakout session, Customer Experience Benchmark, Driving High Growth. I'm Kristen Durham, your host today and the VP of Startup Initiatives at Zendesk. Before we get started, I want to share that this is a Simu Live webinar that we've recorded just for our Let's Talk Change with CX Leaders virtual event. While watching the session, we'd love to engage with you in our Q&A, where we will be answering all of your questions live via chat. So please open the chat, send us your questions. Today, we're going to take a closer look at both B2C and B2B high growth companies, of which we have two great representatives today in Plaid and Stitch Fix. And we're going to share some of the things we uncovered in our research for the Startups CX Benchmark Report, a first of its kind. And let's jump into the research. Starting with this surprising statistic. Our research uncovered that more than 70% of startup founders and decision makers do not have a formal customer support strategy in place. This shows us that many companies are missing out on the opportunity to deliver on the customer experiences that will set them apart from their peers and foster long-term business success. Now, as we go into the research, we're going to be talking a lot about fast-growing startups. How did we define fast-growing in this work? Well, to be considered fast-growing, startups must have doubled their customer support agent count in the first 2 years of using Zendesk, a proxy for employee growth, and have 18 months or less between publicly disclosed funding rounds. And with that covered, we'll dive in. Our research definitely illustrates that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to customer service, certainly no magic recipe for success. However, if there was one overarching trend, it's that fast-growing startups generally move faster and invest more than their peers. Whether you're early in your support journey or well on your way, we've developed some key performance benchmarks from startups who have experienced fast growth to help you assess your own performance and rethink your support goals going forward. If you take a look at our report, we outline 4 key takeaways. Number 1, customer service drives growth. Startups that see faster growth rates start thinking about customer service earlier and embrace more tools and processes than the rest. Our data shows that 1 out of 3 fast-growing startups added support within 2 years of founding. Number 2, omni-channel cuts wait times. Fast-growing startups were more likely to use omni-channel and chat support to help cut wait times and build more efficient teams. In fact, we saw a 2x faster resolution time for fast-growing startups by their second year. Number 3, unicorns embrace self-service. Those that have gone on to become unicorns prioritize self-service features like online help centers. They were 61% faster to adopt self-service features compared to non-unicorns. And finally, startups should rethink their priorities when evaluating customer service and engagement tools. Though fast-growing startups are more likely to use an omni-channel strategy and lean on self-service, startup leaders said these features are less influential in the buying decision when evaluating customer service tools. What I'd like to do now is double-click into a few of these takeaways and look at more of the data. We saw that investing in customer service drives growth. One of the really interesting things we saw here is that timing is important when it comes to customer support. In fact, fast-growing startups that are Zendesk customers were 33% more likely than other startups to implement support within a year of being founded. So when should early-stage startups think about adding support according to our benchmark? You'll want to do so within 9 to 10 months of your first round of fundraising. You'll also want to consider early adoption of tools that prioritize speed and convenience for your customers and internal teams. Compared to their peers, fast-growing startups were 33% more likely to add omnichannel in their first 2 years. They were also 20% more likely to add live channels like chat during the same time period, which helps them solve customer requests faster than asynchronous options like email. In summary, fast-growing startups are quicker to adopt support, utilize more tools and communication channels, and ensure a seamless omnichannel experience for anyone that contacts them. As a result, they're responding to customers faster and more efficiently than the rest of their peers. As fast-growing startups put more time and effort into their support operations, their investments are paying off. Increased productivity means less time keeping customers waiting and a better experience for customers and agents overall. At 6 months, early-stage startups had nearly identical wait times of 14 hours, regardless of whether they were fast-growing or not. It actually took fast-growing teams an hour longer on average to first reply to a customer request than their slower growth peers. But by year 2, fast-growing startups were resolving tickets and responding to customer questions in about half the time of their slower growth peers. Now, what was driving this improvement? Fast-growing startups are doing more than just throwing people at the increased demand from customers to get these quicker results. We actually see their agents getting more productive due to the increased use of technology. And with all the investment fast-growing startups are making in support, we see that efficiency improves over time, and the number of tickets per agent is on average 42% greater for this group than other startups after 2 years. So a couple of recommendations around efficiency and response times. First, productivity improvements take time and investment, but a good target for agent efficiency by the end of year 1 is 100 tickets per agent per month. Secondly, if you're an early stage startup, you should aim to keep your reply times to around 3 hours for non-live channels like email, and have tickets resolved within 1 business day by your 2nd year of adding a support platform. And now, what about the unicorns? Every startup wants to become the next big thing. So what can we learn from the companies using Zendesk that have gone on to become unicorns? Turns out a lot. For one, they adopt omni-channel and live channels quicker than anyone else, even quicker than the fast growth startups in our database. In their first 2 years, unicorns are 37% more likely to offer omni-channel customer service, 38% more likely to have rolled out chat, and 48% more likely to have phone support. They were also quicker to build out online help centers to answer customer questions before the customers reached out for help. And finally, unicorns added self-service 61% faster than other startups in their first year. And the majority have a self-service feature like a help center or community forum by year 2. So before I wrap up, I want to talk a little bit more about the importance of self-service according to our data. And as you can see in these charts, to deliver better experiences for customers, faster growth startups directed more resources towards self-service and live channels like phone and chat. If you're new to support, you should focus on launching self-service early. Our benchmark suggests you should launch your online help center with at least 8 articles to start, with the goal of adding 3 new articles each month to ensure the quality of your service continues to improve over time. So that is a very quick walkthrough of some of the key findings. There's lots more data where that came from. So if you want to learn more, please check out the full report on our website. And with that, let's talk growth with our CX experts. I am so excited to have the chance to discuss growth and change with our special guest from Plaid and Stitch Fix. Alex Dickey leads the technical support organization at Plaid, where he's been building and scaling teams for the past 5 years. And Marta Valer is the strategy manager in the client experience team at Stitch Fix, working to drive operational and strategic improvements in the service Stitch Fix provides, and representing her CX team across a variety of company initiatives. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Wonderful. And just to kick things off, I'd love it. Maybe Marta, could you start and tell us a little bit more about yourself and about your company?
Yeah, for sure. So Stitch Fix is a company that offers a personalized shopping experience through fixes, which are the name that we give to our boxes, which have apparel and accessories that are curated by science and humans. So a mix of our algorithms and our stylists. And also what we call direct orders, which is basically anyone can go to the website and can just shop directly from us. Our algorithm puts together recommendations for outfits and items. And so we're really excited to be talking here with you guys today. I joined the company a little bit about over a year ago. And like you mentioned, Kristen, I'm the client experience strategy manager. We have around 300 agents based in Austin, and I'm part of the strategy and business ops team for CX. Half of it is in San Francisco, half of it is in Austin, and yeah, that's our team and our company.
Great, thanks, Marta. And Alex, why don't you give us a quick intro too?
Yeah, so I joined Plaid about 4.5 years ago, and we were roughly like a 20-person company based out of San Francisco. We're now just over 500 with offices in London and Amsterdam. And what Plaid does, so we started out by building like the technical infrastructure APIs that enabled consumers to share their financial information with developers, and that like today powers a good portion of the fintech ecosystem. So helping to solve that problem of for fintech developers, it being really hard to connect consumers from all the 11,000 plus financial institutions in the US through one portal. That was kind of the original problem that Plaid solved. And yeah, as you mentioned in the intro, I lead our technical support organization within the support function at Plaid.
Great. And maybe I'll go back to you, Alex. You know, so you were at the company from the very early days. I think the first stat that I shared was something like 70% of companies maybe don't have a CX strategy early on. So I'm curious to know when you started at Plaid, what was the state of the CX strategy then? What were your priorities? What were the kinds of considerations that the company was making?
Yeah. Early on, to be totally honest, like our strategy was not very well defined. And if any of our customers from 2016 are watching this, they could probably attest to that. But I think originally, like because we were such a small technical company, I think we really focused on support as a means to improving the product itself. Which I think like today that still is the case, but ideally as you mature, you're able to identify more of those issues proactively, and you don't actually need to wait for your customers to tell you that something is wrong. You just have good enough monitoring and alerting such that you catch those issues sooner, which is the case today, or at least more so than it was then. But I think something that evolved over time was kind of the emphasis that we placed on the actual like experience of the people to whom we were offering support. And I think the catalyst for that, or one of the catalysts for that, was in 2019, Plaid acquired Quovo, which was a company that operated in a similar space, but with a little bit more of like a enterprise support spin than technical support. And who had like a bigger focus on the experience of the people to whom they were offering support. And I think that just kind of like helped trigger for us that is something that, even though our audiences more often than not were either developers or our customer support teams, that improving like our communication, so the frequency with which we communicate about their issues, making sure that we're giving them information that they can take back to their teams or their users and enable them to set realistic expectations. That was a really important piece that we weren't focused on enough. And so now we kind of have this like clarified mission that really what support is here to do is to help build trust with our customers. And that's something that support is kind of in a unique position to do, given that we talk to people when they're coming to us with issues. So we try to do that by, uncovering and solving problems that impact the reliability of our products, setting realistic expectations about when those problems will be solved, and then finally representing customers throughout the business. Those are kind of the strategies that we have in place to achieve that goal of building trust between customers and Plaid.
Yeah, I think oftentimes for B2B companies, it's an evolution in the kind of support that you're striving to give. Marta at Stitch Fix, I think that, you know, the fix has been so central to the way you interact with clients, you know, since day one. Maybe tell us a little bit about your strategy, how that looked, you know, from more of this B2C standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. So I can share a little bit of history to give some context, but the client experience team started small here in San Francisco in HQ, but then very early on moved to Austin around the fall of 2014. And it actually started off renting rooms in a hotel before we found our home in Congress Avenue. And it has grown up to, like I said before, around 300 agents today. We started offering email support only and then introduced chat and phone around 4 years ago. And we have worked continuously on improving the help center. Actually, this past February, we added the web widget. And that has really, I think, improved the experience that we provide to our clients. Email continues being one of our strongest channel, or the strongest one, actually, with around 80% of our volume coming through that. And I think in terms of the strategy, they're having some changes for sure since the early days. So there are also some things that have continued. So for instance, like we have always considered CX to be a growth enablement function for the rest of the company, and always paid a really strong focus on empowering agents to use their judgment to be to bridge the gaps between the experience and save the relationship with clients. So we've always been very principles driven and not necessarily policy driven. And we always have tried to elevate the voice of the agents to drive some early future updates. So for instance, the exchange option that clients have when they're checking out their fixes online is something that came through agent feedback, because that's what they were hearing clients wanted. And it ended up being a product feature and a product improvement. But I think one of the changes, for instance, was that initially the team was focused on building a team of generalists. And so all agents supported all issues, so supporting senior, different tiers, as well as different specializations like client love, loss prevention in different teams. And there has been a change in strategy in that sense over time. The team stood up these specializations, and now we have validated the need to have those functions separated to better understand the agent skill set. But client experience has continued, like I said, to be regarded as a growth enabler for the company. And I think today's strategy, if we had to describe it, is focused around three areas. The first one is agent efficiency, so reducing the friction for the agent experience by providing them with the right tools and resources to make agents better equipped to help our clients. The second one is to reduce friction for our clients. So you mentioned before, like self-solve, empowering clients to really take action and be able to solve their own issues. And then finally, we're really focused on trying to create a more personalized experience. So offering a white glove service, be able to identify what clients are going to need and at what point in their journey, and be able to anticipate those needs and connect with them and tailor our approach to their needs. So there are aspects of the strategy that we started off 10 years ago that have been maintained, but obviously a lot of it has been updated, and we continue to update it as we go.
Yeah, I think it's a privilege to be able to work at a company that from day one has seen customer experience as a part of the growth strategy. You touched on a little bit, Marta, but I'd love to go a little bit deeper. You touched on this experience, this example where you're channeling customer feedback and having that inform the product. So many companies struggle with, what you do with all of these conversations. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit more how at Stitch Fix you translate customer feedback to the rest of the organization. How do you take it from the agents and make it, meaningful and actionable more broadly?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Stitch Fix is obviously a data-driven company, and the truth is that there's so much richness and information in tickets that clients are leaving us. So before, this was a very manual process for us. We had a group of agents that we would just set up a task force around, and they would do a deep dive analysis on tickets to try to understand client sentiment. As you can imagine, that was very time consuming and very manual. And so we actually have recently signed a contract with a text analytics company. So our insights manager in the team has been partnering with different departments in the company, like marketing and strategy, to be able to provide insightful data to other parts. And so it's really encouraging to see that other teams now look at CX to try to get a better understanding of what clients say. So like I said, we're constantly launching new features, new products, testing and iterating, and having client feedback at the core of that has been key to be able to pivot and iterate fast. So I think a specific example, for instance, that we can share, very relevant, I think, to this moment that we're living right now is like around the pandemic. So when we started seeing some warehouse closures, we started to realize that we were being slightly delayed on some of our shipments. And so one of the things that we realized was that as shipments were being late, more tickets were coming in, and some of them were bad sentiment ones. And so we kicked off a cross-functional effort to address this and to mitigate the impact in our clients. And this ended up being a way for us, for CX, to be able to translate that information that we were seeing in our clients' ticket. And we were able to make some changes in product, including the website, in-app notifications, messaging on emails, and really try to set up a cross-functional work to be able to address our clients' needs and be better prepared to answer their questions. And so it's been a really interesting work, I think, to partner with, like I said, other parts of the company and utilizing that information, that client data that we have, and be able to translate that and make product changes in our company.
Cool. That's fantastic. And I think in addition to, you know, these challenges that a lot of folks try to tackle and that, you know, you guys are tackling so well at Stitch Fix, you know, understanding the data, understanding sentiment and sharing that, you know, there's also kind of this other dual challenge of how do we do this, you know, in a very scalable and efficient way. And Alex, I know that, you know, when we were talking before this session, you know, you had talked deeply and mentioned earlier, you know, the transition that Plaid went through, your CX org went through following that acquisition of Quovo. You know, you ran a pretty lean operation for the size of the business. And, you know, I think that isn't something that's easily accomplished. And so for those teams that are really, you know, wondering how to drive operational efficiency while still, you know, maintaining and supporting the growth of the business, can you talk a little bit about what you did, whether it was tools or technology, some other kind of investment that helped you, you know, give a great customer experience while keeping up with growth?
Yeah, definitely. I think because we had a relatively small team, what that instilled was sort of this habit of self-improvement. And I think it forced us to reckon with the fact that without adding additional people to the team, there's essentially two things that we could do to increase capacity, which is to either increase the efficiency of the team itself, or, as you've talked about, to enable more self-service for customers. And so those two themes were basically always things that we were working on as a team. And I think before getting into specific tools, I think we really benefited just organizationally at Plaid. Support sits in parallel to the engineering, product, and design teams. So that org is kind of, parallel to our go-to-market functions. And I think because of that, there was just a lot of natural collaboration that happened that was really healthy between those organizations, those functions, and ours. So from design, I think we learned a lot about how to get good at defining the problem that we're trying to solve and the audience for whom we're solving it. And then how to move from that understanding of problem and audience to then actually brainstorming and prototyping solutions. And then from our engineering team, learned how to actually spec out and then implement good technical solutions to those problems. So I think just at a macro level, that would be the first thing, or the thing that I would encourage most, is just be in the habit of understanding what your problems are as an organization, which I think the first step there is to really be gathering feedback from both your customers and also from the team itself. I think ideally, as a leader within support, you are kind of almost treating your support organization the way a product manager would treat a product. So you want to understand what the ideal outcomes are. In support's case, that's high quality responses and escalations and good communication to customers as quickly as possible. And then spending time to really understand the people involved in making that happen, or your support team in our case. And then, so a little more tactically, I think some of the things that really helped us, succeed to the extent that we did. And again, I think we were a little bit too lean for too long. So, but things that helped us, one was just developing relationships with other functions at Plaid. So working with our business operations team to get like a better understanding of our capacity, working with the tools team in our engineering function to help build out some of these tools for support. I think just like not being afraid to ask for help is really important. And then secondly, just implementing some of the pre-built tools within Zendesk. So the time tracker was helpful for us in just identifying areas of opportunity. And then using that to then kind of build some automation via the Zendesk API so that we can integrate the data that we get from customers with some of the tools that we have on the back end. That helped automate some of the work that was otherwise pretty manual for our support team. And yeah, so I think kind of that, those are just a couple tools that were helpful for us, but I think most importantly, just being in that habit of kind of self-improvement and solving problems within your team is, yeah, what I would try to encourage others to do.
Yeah, I think the point about, defining what is, because the problem can be, so big and so hairy, and, being focused and being articulate around what it is you're really trying to solve for, whether that's, the issue that a customer maybe sometimes is not really clearly articulating to you and getting to the root of their problem, or, within the company trying to understand what is the priority, given the priorities are always shifting and needing to pivot. I think that's one of the things that's very unique about startups, is none of these things are static, right? And so there has to be a built-in expectation that whatever we define the problem as, whatever sort of structures we built around it, they will be useful and helpful for us for a time, but we also need to be aware and looking forward to what's needed to take that next step in the business. And so maybe with that, I know we're running short on time. Maybe with that, I'll just ask you both as we close, and maybe Marta, you can weigh in first. What is your advice, having been at the companies you're in now, as well as others that have gone through pretty significant change over time? What might be the advice, knowing all that you know now, that you might give to someone in an early stage company that's just getting started and needs that shortcut to maybe know where to get started? Again, because we heard it directly from customers. Many don't have a strategy for a long time.
Yeah, I think setting up a strategy early on is really important. I would share a couple of insights or recommendations that I think can be helpful. The first one, I think, is investing in your employees. One of the things that really surprised me when I came to Stitch Fix about their client experience team is the quality of the people. They all have very diverse backgrounds. They have impressive careers and a true passion for CX, and they are really making client experience their career. And I think that really translates into quality of work, like I said, passion. And so dedicating time, resources, and effort to really draft who do you want your clients to be talking to and who do you want to be solving your clients' problems is really important. And I think that that can be a short-term thing that you do that is going to benefit you in the long term. But also, and I really think it's important that for any company strategies is to start with what your clients expect and care about. So really try to understand that. And once you have that insight into what your client cares about in terms of like the solutions that you offer, the timeliness of the resolution, the channel of access, then you can build an organization that invests in high impact service and that identifies scalable solutions for less impactful areas of the business. So I would say those are the two call outs that I would recommend for any company, but really trying to put a strategy early on is important for the long-term scalability of the company.
Alex?
Yeah, I would actually first just, echo Marta on both of those. I think support can sometimes be seen as like a pass-through function, right? People do a stint there for maybe 6 months or a year or less, and then just kind of view it as a stepping stone. And I think making support a first-class function within your organization has paid dividends for us. And that's reflected in some of those efficiency improvements that we've seen, like the context that you build over time by facilitating people's career growth within support is huge, and also pays dividends to other functions within the business who now have these like experts about the products and about support that they can turn to and with whom they can collaborate. So first, I would just, really strongly agree with that. Secondly, I would strongly agree with, talking to customers. They will tell you how important support is. And it can be helpful also to have like some data backing that up, whether that's your, like CSAT in the context of your tickets or like a net promoter score. That was one of the things that I think really helped us add some firepower to support at Plaid, was just having customers tell us pretty unambiguously that, the service like wasn't good enough, right? And that just made it clear, like, okay, this is something we need to invest in even more heavily. And then lastly, and this is more on the tactical side, but just really developing like a strong capacity model and understanding what the drivers are for your tickets so that you can look ahead into the future and know the urgency with which you should be working on those efficiency or self-service solutions. Looking ahead into the future and just kind of like knowing what's coming so that you don't find yourself with a growing backlog and kind of like falling behind on SLAs, things like that. I think that's really valuable both for like team and company culture, but most importantly, that's really important to customers. So just developing that like a hypothesis about growth over time and then building your organization to respond to that, I think would be, the last thing that I would, have put a bit more time into if I were doing it again.
Fantastic. Well, I think hearing this advice from folks like you at the companies that you represent, it's hard to say don't do these things. So, invest in your first class org, hire right, build for customers, really focus on those ticket drivers. I think, and solve for the present, but always kind of keeping an eye to the future. I think that these are great pieces of advice. Hopefully everyone who's joining us today is writing them down just like I am, to take away. But with that, I think we're at time. I just want to say thank you again, Alex and Marta, for joining us today at this event and for answering questions in the chat as well. It's been super insightful and hopefully really valuable for the startups who are watching and thinking about their own customer experience needs. And so
Thank
I think
you for having us, Kristen.
Yeah. We'll schedule the next one sometime soon. And I think just on closing, we have one more slide. I want to share some resources. So for more information, I welcome you all to download the Startup CX Benchmark Report. If you're an early stage startup interested in working with Zendesk, please read more about our program and apply at zendesk.com/startups. And finally, we also recently launched a new podcast called Sit Down Startup, featuring Zendesk leaders paired with startup founders, CEOs, and makers, talking about how customer experience has been crucial to their success. So search for Zendesk in the podcast library on Spotify, Google, or Apple. You'll find us there. And once again, thanks to the audience for joining us today. Thanks to our speakers. Please stay safe and healthy, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.